Okay, so here's a few little guiding points that I would normally do when I'm getting set up. So after doing like a 3-point polar alignment, then using Stellarium. So Stellarium is a great piece of software which is allowing me to see the night sky for the location that I'm actually in. You can actually see the fact that there's this border running around. And what this is basically saying is it's everything that's kind of blocking my field of view for where I am. So I know where stars will come in and out, or galaxies or nebula or whatever it's going to be. So, you know, we can see with the north position here. You can see that the moon's out currently. And if I keep moving around, we can actually see where we are. Oh, no, we're around on the south, aren't we? We can see where we are currently, which is here. There you go, Celestron C8 XLT. So what I'd normally do is I would use Stellarium to kind of move the mount to the specific locations, but you can do all of this inside of Nina as well. So you'll actually see inside of Nina that I was searching earlier for one of the targets I wanted to do. Let's say if I wanted to do something else. So say if we wanted to have a look at the Wizard's Nebula. Yeah, everybody loves Harry Potter. So NGC 7380. Let's have a look for this, shall we? So NGC 7380. And that is that one. If I set that for the framing assistant, you'll see that it's changed what I was actually looking at there. Now what this box here is allowing me to set the scope area for what I want to target. So you could actually move it all the way down here if you really wanted to. Now the cool thing with this as well is if you really wanted to, you could even set down mosaics. So what that's going to do is it's going to tell the telescope to capture in that area, capture in that quadrant, and then that quadrant. If you then add the mosaic of that together, you'll get an even bigger picture. Which is not something I've done properly yet. Obviously, once you've actually targeted something, you can actually then set that to a sequence, which is what we're on now. So I'm not going to change that right at this moment. Because I'm actually on a sequence at the moment where it's capturing the Cocoon Nebula. And you can see that I'm actually capturing with the HA filter. I'm capturing for 300 seconds, which is basically 5 minutes. I'm then capturing S2. I was originally capturing O3, which is oxygen 3, but I was finding that there wasn't that much detail coming out of the shots. So I decided to turn that one off and just left it with HA, S2, and a little bit of luminosity. But you'll notice the luminosity I've turned down a little bit to 180 seconds. Reason being is the luminosity is pretty strong anyway, so I don't really need to have a 5-minute capture of that one. Obviously, when I do set the sequence off as well, I'm telling it to cool the camera. If need be, it will do a meridian flip. And obviously when it's finished the entire sequence, I'm just telling it to warm up the camera, basically to the ambient temperature. So once it's kind of doing all of that, you're basically into these kind of sequences, as you can see here now. And it will just keep running through them and loop through them. So it'll do HAS2L, then it'll do HAS2L next time round. And this is what you can actually see here are the images that are kind of developing. I said earlier that O3 wasn't really generating much for me, so you can actually see if I click on the previous image, even though it's got the stars on here, there's not really much data coming out of it, and I've got the usual little halos around the stars, which the O3 filters do tend to do. Something else as well that I was mentioning in chat is obviously you can see down here, this is all the tracking that's going on. It's basically trying to keep the telescope tracked onto a specific target, being this one target, which is IC5146, the Cocoon Nebula. And what the scope is basically, there's a tiny little scope on top of the telescope. You can't see it because it's actually just slightly out of shot at this moment in time. I can't even show you on here because the cursor's going behind. That's the guide camera that's running on top of the main scope, and what that's doing is basically keeping track of the stars. So this is the quadrant that I'm actually capturing at the moment, and it's targeting a specific star, and it's it's targeting multiple stars as well. And what it basically does is every 2.5 seconds it's keeping track of where the camera is and will shift it accordingly if it feels that it's slightly out of alignment. Now, there's a lot of jitter happening here tonight, which wasn't the case last night, so something weird's kind of going on with the scope tonight, but I'm trying to correct that by running a PEC curve here. So I'm trying to tell it to stay track of what it's actually doing. But I mean, there you saw the star moved out quite rapidly there, which really shouldn't be the case. So there's definitely something going on with the mount tonight. That wasn't the case previously. You'll see there, it just dropped in the HA filter. That was the latest one, which is actually not too bad. There's ever so slight elongation to the stars, but it's not the end of the world. It's not too horrific. But yeah, what this PhD2 is doing is, and PhD stands for push here dummy. It's telling the mount just to kind of keep track of that particular location. So you don't end up with like huge star trails across the actual page, because naturally, you know, the sky is always moving, right? You know, across the sky. So if we don't keep track of it, there's no way I can keep track of trying to do 5-minute exposures. So we can now see on the sky cloud camera that the moon, it's not the sun, is very quickly creeping into view here. In probably a couple of minutes, that's going to look like, it's actually ironically going to look like a supernova has just hit the screen. But obviously, you know, the moon's pretty much, I would say, is it 98%, 97-98% full tonight. So obviously it's adding a lot of pollution to the sky, more so than the houses and the lights around me. And when you're trying to capture these deep sky objects, then, you know, when you got a full moon, it's it adds the complexity to it. It kind of like, it adds its own light pollution, natural light pollution, to what ends up happening as well. So I'm actually pretty happy with the fact that I'm getting some detail. I mean, you can see on the HA shot there. I mean, look at the detail that's starting to come out in the middle here. But if it was a probably dark night, cloudless, no moon, you'd be getting a lot more detail. And I know around this nebula, there's actually more cloud debris, so I'm not really seeing that at all. Well, not really. I'm not seeing that at all tonight, so I may end up eventually coming back to this target when it's not a full moon and then see what actually happens here. Interesting one that it's not really come out much, but can you see there's a very slight line running down here? That's a satellite trail, but because I was capturing on HA at the time, it didn't really come out with as much detail. If I'd been capturing Luminosity at that particular point, you'd have really seen it. So this is the other thing that we're actually fighting against as well, is you know, it's aircraft, it's satellite trails, etc. Because if you're capturing for you know, a minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is, you're kind of like building up a long-term exposure picture. And if you've got a satellite moving across the entire screen, you will absolutely see that one. If you've got another one that comes at the same time, you will see that one. So you end up with like it's like a hashing of the actual image, where that makes it a lot more complicated to try and edit those kind of trails out of the image. So you'll see on here, it's starting to settle down a little bit more. It doesn't look it, but it is. You know, the RA and the deck are pretty close, 0.666765. It's actually what you're kind of aiming for at the end of the day, not 0.6, but keeping them pretty parallel. It's ending up as a total of 0.94 at the moment, so it's under 1, which is really what you do want to try and target for. You'll notice there's these big huge jump points, so either something slipped on the mount ever so slightly, there's a bit of a disturbance. I could even say, you know, maybe it's a bit of like wind turbulence, things like this, but the wind gusts shouldn't be that bad tonight. Well, maybe in a bit. But it can also be the worm gears, the drive themselves, which are actually causing these slight disruptions. So I'd only just recently remounted the HEQ5 Pro. So what I'm doing is I'm rerunning a new pet curve training, just to kind of let it build out what is happening with those gears as they're moving around, because I had to repair it recently because one of the drives had warped. I think it was on the deck or the RA, I can't remember. But because of that, obviously I had to, you know, recalibrate the mount, then get it back up on the pier again, and then rebalance the entire telescope with the weights. And obviously there's a lot of guiding, tracking, everything else you got to redo as well. Now, I may or may not be staying with this mount. It depends on what happens to the EQ6R Pro, which did have a fault. So it's another bigger mount. My payload is very borderline, I would say, at this moment in time. So this is why I was actually looking for a, you know, better mount. It's got more payload capabilities and potentially more tracking capabilities. But to be fair, when I got the EQ6R Pro, it had a lot of stuttering in it. The tracking was awful. Even though the telescope was mounted really well, if I say so myself. But you know, it had all of that. Then I had to try to do the guiding assist and everything else like this, and it was just all over the place. It was the worst I'd ever seen. So I'm really hoping that's a fault with that particular mount. and I do hear back from the vendor soon, but we'll have to see. Since doing the HEQ5 Pro with fixing the issue with the drive and the belt, it's certainly been better. I mean, last night was amazing. It was so good. I think I was at 0.4 to 0.5 for most of the night. So I really don't know what's going to change tonight to make that kind of a difference. I mean, in fairness, I only had an hour last night, but certainly a lot better. So we'll see. I'll keep redoing the guide, maybe recalibrate a little bit more, especially once the pet curve is on there as well. And then we'll see, and then hopefully we'll hear from the vendor during the week if I did actually have a major issue with the EQ6R Pro. Fingers crossed it was, because I was expecting a lot more than what I got, which was pretty much a heartache. So we'll see. So there we have the pet curves just being completed on the recording. You can actually see, you know, the trend of the worm gear. Any slight corrections that it actually needs to make should now play into what it's actually doing from a tracking point of view. So maybe we'll start to see a little bit better, because I mean, hell, it's gone bad. But let's wait and see. I mean, when I look at the rain deck there, yeah, you got some spikes for sure. We'll see. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is stop what it's doing there now. And actually send this off to see if I can recalibrate it, because it shouldn't be doing that. It's pretty bad. Send it off down here. So as you can see, I actually chose this particular star here. It's near the meridian. It's near the J2000 equator as well. So see, it's coming down here now. It's tracking in. There we go. Pretty good. And this will be having an absolute fit because I told it to move. Refresh that. There we go. That's pretty much that star here that we're looking at. So let me just do a quick little snapshot here. Just a 5 seconds should be absolutely fine. Yeah, there we go. So that one is actually not too bad. So what I'm actually going to do is, that's too big, definitely too big. I'm hoping I'm not too close to the side of the screen to calibrate this tracking. So we'll see. So what this is doing now is it's calibrating the tracking. So shifting between the east-west steps at this moment in time, then I'll do north-south. And what it's doing is it's just measuring the movement of that star, and you know, working out what is the best kind of movement speed, the minimum, maximum, etc. Okay, so this is it's nearly done. It's calibrating back in again there now. You'll notice as well on the EQ mod on the track rate, since I did the PEC curve recording, it no longer just says sidereal, it says sidereal plus PEC. What that means is it's doing the standard sidereal tracking, which is obviously the movement of the sky during the course of the night, but it's also adding fluctuations based on the PEC, which is the worm drive, the motors, the shift on the actual mount itself. So here we go, the guiding had finished. Now it's trying to sort itself out. So that was just a quick recalibration of the original tracking, but it still doesn't look great, does it? Yeah, look at the RA go there. This is probably one of those charts that you really shouldn't be obsessed with. Unfortunately, we all are. Yeah, okay, something really weird's going on with this. You saw the deck really spike there. So the deck is the red line and the RA is the blue line. What I'm starting to wonder at the moment is there something that's happened on the mount since yesterday that is now affecting the kind of weight balance or whatever? As I said, I mean, I was really on the borderline with the weight anyway on the HGQ5, so I'm wondering if I'm hitting another similar situation. So yeah, it's going a bit crazy. I might have to knock it on the head there just for this evening. I mean, I got some data in, which is pretty cool. But then just go in and check on the mount, just see if there's anything else going on. I obviously, because I'm doing this remotely, I don't know if, or I can hear necessarily if there's any other issues on the mount. So, time to go and get gold. Thank you for watching.